When I was 10, I played a late night game of flashlight tag with a bunch of neighborhood kids. If you don't know what flashlight tag is, it's the same as tag, but you play in the dark. The person who is it gets a flashlight, and they yell at the person who they've caught to make sure they know that they've been caught. It was really cloudy that night, and most people had their curtains drawn, so it was a perfect level of darkness for hiding in. The side of the street my house was on was skirted by a broad length of woods. That was basically a boundary for our side of the game. You could run through any yard, even go across the street and run through their yards, but you weren't allowed to hide in the woods because it was too difficult for you to be found in there, and it was very easy to trip over the tree limbs and end up with poison oak. Of course, this rule was frequently and fraudulently ignored. When people would go into the woods to be close to being caught, they duck off into the bushes for a few seconds or run behind a group of trees to evade capture. I don't remember who was it at the time, but I was hiding in the backyard between two houses down the street from mine. The family that lived there had a little playhouse for their daughter, a swing set, and a doghouse, but no dog. I would periodically duck into the doghouse whenever I saw the person with the flashlight searching beam approaching me. Those of us trying to hide from the it person like to spook each other in the darkness by jumping out of nowhere and making each other scream, giving away our positions. I thought I knew where the it guy was, but I got comfortable hanging around the swing set. Suddenly, a person with a flashlight came around the corner of the house and angled it toward me. I jumped and ran for the edge of the woods. When I got there, I hovered in case they saw me, and were going to yell at me for cheating. The beam of the light seemed to explore the swing where I was, then came in my direction. But there was no sense of hurry at it at all. I wondered for a second if maybe I had attracted the attention of the homeowner. Most people on the block knew we were out playing flashlight tag at this hour, but you never can be sure that someone might get nervous that you're in the yard for too long. So I crouched down in the grass and waited to see who the person was. They shined the light right in my face. I tried to cover it with my hand to avoid identification. The creepy thing was, they never said anything, just shined the light on me. "You got me," I exclaimed, hoping that if it was the homeowner, they'd realize I was playing flashlight tag and I thought they were the tagger. Then I realized that 2 houses down, people were yelling that the it guy was flashing the beam on them and chasing them around. I stood up and tried to see who was shining the light on me. They just stood there, not moving, not saying anything. I felt a little freaked out. If you don't want us to play in your yard, I'll go and tell them it's off limits, okay? The person just started walking toward me. I didn't feel right, so I started walking toward the edge of the yard. The person just kept shining the light on me and coming toward me, so I ran. When I looked back, the person with the flashlight was running too, and they were an adult, much bigger and much faster than me. I felt scared now, not sure why the person was chasing me. I was running toward where the other kids had been, but they were gone now. It just seemed to be me and the person with the flashlight. I dropped to the ground, shaking bushes and stuff, trying to confuse the person, then shimmied under a ring of thick bushes and crawled up. I could see the flashlight in the woods with me. Looking around, I could hear the person's footsteps breaking sticks and crunching on the pine needles. I didn't know what was going on, and I just wanted to get back to all the other kids. Eventually, the flashlight wandered deeper into the woods, and I crawled quiet as a mouse back to the edge of the trees, then got up and ran toward the street. I was immediately caught by the person who was it, and I didn't care. He yelled loud that I was now it, and I tried to tell him that there was someone else in the woods with a flashlight wandering around. But he took off into the dark, yelling about no tag backs. Don't go into the woods," I yelled, but nobody responded. Of course, any who heard me would just assume I was talking about not cheating at the game, but I was sincerely worried about the person who was wandering around the woods. Of course, now I had a flashlight of my own, so I thought I should go see if I can find out who that was in the woods to make myself feel better. I went back behind the house I'd come from, and a bunch of laughing shadows scampered out of sight into the neighboring yards. I ignored them and headed straight for the trees. I couldn't see any other light in there, so I just thought maybe he went home. I didn't know if it was a man or a woman, but I didn't imagine a woman was trudging through the woods at night. So I went back about playing the game again, anxious of the lingering thought that maybe there was someone wandering in the woods who didn't seem to be playing the game with us. I ran across the street, chased people through the backyards there, but after a while I found the lots empty and realized that they must have gone across the street again. I ran back over and was exploring the beach's backyard. Mrs. Beach had a clothesline with a bunch of drying sheets on it, and her daughter Charlotte liked to hide among the linings and stay close to home in case she got too scared of the dark. She was 9, just a year younger than me. I thought I heard something in the tree line, so I went over and was waving the flashlight around into the woods. "Stay out of the woods," I remember yelling. I waved the flashlight back and forth a couple of passes, then saw someone run off to the distance. I held the flashlight on whoever it was. They were about half a job into the woods. Hard to make out, but it looked to me like Charlotte. Charlotte had dark brown hair that her mother insisted on keeping at shoulder length. We always dressed dark for flashlight tag, and Charlotte liked to wear the deep purple sweatshirt, and so it was pretty easy to tell it was Charlotte whenever I tagged someone. "Charlotte, I see you," I yelled. She just stood there. I continued to hold the flashlight on her and call her name, but she didn't seem to move. She stood there partially obscured by the tree and looked at me. The distance between us was enough that I could see if she was blinking or not. But she had her head propped at an angle, like she was looking around the tree at me. Her mouth was hanging slightly open. Every now and then she sort of twitched and squirmed. It was a real freaky kind of movement. "Charlotte, come out of there," I yelled. "Everybody, Charlotte's it, but she won't come out of the woods." Some kid, including my friend Dustin, appeared behind me and started joining in my yelling for Charlotte to come out. "Do you see her?" I asked. "Yeah, she's over there behind the tree. Charlotte, get over here," Dustin yelled. But she didn't come. "Charlotte, are you okay? Get over here, you big dummy." Charlotte seemed to stand up straighter and then disappear behind the tree. We could hear movement, but it seemed to be going away rather than toward us. Dustin started shouting Charlotte's name again and trudging into the woods after her. But I grabbed him and gave him the flashlight to take with him. I was scared again, because this all seemed surreal. I went to Charlotte's house and knocked on the door until her father answered. "Mr. Beach, Charlotte won't come out of the woods, and I'm worried about her," I told him. I wasn't sure if he'd take me seriously, but he rolled up his newspaper and disappeared into the closet behind the door for a moment, before returning with a huge flashlight strapped to a car battery. "Show me where she is," he told me. So I led him to the woods and pointed to where I'd seen her. "She was right there," I said, "by a tree. She wouldn't come out, and she was acting like she was sick or something." A bunch of other kids kept calling Charlotte. Charlotte's father and I could see Dustin's flashlight beam moving around the trees. Mr. Beach went after him. They explored the woods for a good 15-20 minutes, and Mr. Beach started getting real angry. We could hear him yelling very loudly for Charlotte, threatening her with all sorts of punishments if she didn't get back to the backyard at that instant. The game was over by now, and we kids stood there in the beach's backyard among the linings and watched Dustin come back through, running through the bushes with a dead flashlight. Eventually, Mr. Beach came back through the woods too. "Game over, kids," he said. "Get inside. Ask your folks if they can help me bring flashlights." We all ran back home. My dad went out with 3 different flashlights. My brother went and turned on the lights in the back rooms and opened the curtains and shades to help illuminate the backyard. I sat on the couch all upset, and she eventually came and hugged me and sat with me a while. I told her about the man who chased me with the flashlight, and I thought Charlotte might have run into him too. Mr. Beach had gone inside and called them to report a missing child. They brought huge lights and did march through the woods, checking it very thoroughly, but didn't find her. My mother told my dad what I had told her, and he and an officer and I ended up giving a statement. They went to the house 3 doors down and knocked on the door. The folks that lived there had been asleep and didn't know who would have been in their backyard. The police asked all up and down the neighborhood, but nobody claimed to know anything. The other end of the woods came to the road, mainly used by logging trucks. They found Charlotte 2 days later, on the other side of the logging road, down an embankment and at the end of the stream, stuffed into a drain pipe. Her neck had been broken, and she had apparently been stabbed multiple times afterward. My parents wouldn't tell me about it. They thought it would upset me, but Dustin told me all the details at school the next day. It was the most awful thing that this town had ever experienced. The people blocked off the logging roads and spent months tracking down loggers and truckers who frequently used it. There was a curfew for months, and we were told not to play flashlight tag anymore. We didn't argue. What leaves me shaking to this day is the memory of Charlotte's face, hanging around from behind the tree, looking at me. Sometimes I wonder if at the moment I had been witnessing her death, and I wonder if that almost had been me.